Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 104 of At the Coffee Table podcast. 104 has a little bit of meaning to me. It's my old badge number from the fire department. Anyways, this is At the Coffee Table podcast. I appreciate you tuning in and viewing the podcast each and every week. As you can see this week, I'm flying solo. My co-host Bob Kahn, between scheduling and a family commitment, it was just too difficult for him to jump on this week. He will definitely be back next week, but you know what? Life happens. And Bob actually didn't know I was going to record a new podcast. We had planned on re-releasing one of the previous podcasts that we had recorded, but I came up with a concept I really wanted to talk about, and it comes from my networking group that I had created on Facebook. And this networking group, for whatever reason, the last 6 to 9 months has really the membership of the Facebook group has really just exploded. And realistically, it comes from networking and people knowing people and seeing as business owners or entrepreneurs of this group, seeing that their colleagues or friends or the interactions with other people that they've had, they jump in and become a member of the Facebook group. I created this Facebook group, and somebody asked me this last night because we had our monthly meet and greet that I started back in November. And somebody last night asked me, why did you end up starting this group? And realistically, like this podcast and the lockdown of the pandemic, it was just something on a whim to get people to come together and share ideas. And like I said, over the better part of the last year, the membership of this group has really grown tremendously, and I couldn't be more pleased. Which brings me to the topic of the podcast, which is the power of networking and mastermind groups. I started thinking more, especially after a group meet and greet last night. Started thinking about it overnight, and there is some real power in those connections, and whatever you throw out into the universe of things you want to accomplish, ideas that you have, maybe projects that you have, it will come back to you in one form or another, positive or negative. And I've been working with a colleague on a concept, and we've been making different connections here and there, and we threw that out in the universe. And last night at the meet and greet, I ended up connecting with a guy that works in the industry that we were growing this concept with, and it was just a fascinating conversation. So the importance of networking is an essential part of building a successful business, adventure, project. It's a way to connect with those like-minded individuals, learn from other people, find new opportunities. One of the benefits of networking is that you're able to, it allows you to expand your knowledge and learn from others who have more experience than you. And I find that so very valuable. My biggest lessons in my career, in my life, were people that were more experienced than you. And I'll tell you a short story, and I always kind of chuckle to myself, which is funny by itself. But all the years I spent in a firehouse, I had a mentor that at the time I didn't realize he was mentoring me. And it was probably because we were within 3 or 4 years of age of each other. And as a younger guy in the firehouse with this other younger guy, it's tough to look at them as mentors. But our entire existence in this firehouse, our entire existence and interactions together within the fire service, he was always mentoring me. And I really appreciate that more now than I did then. And I think that it speaks to paying attention to those that have more experience than you. And this can be valuable, extremely valuable, as you're starting out in that new business, that new venture, that new job, that new career or industry. There's something really powerful about networking with these people and hearing what people are up to and what they've been, exposed to as far as education and information. There's no doubt there's no end to a lot of the information availability and the sheer data that's out there right now. With mastermind groups too, you can read different personal development or business development type books, and they will talk about mastermind. And One of the more important things I think I've learned in the last few years is the most successful people really didn't get to where they are without a team. Um, I think in Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is all about mastermind groups. And in that book, they talk about Henry Ford. If you've never heard or read the story about Henry Ford, it's super interesting because you took a guy that had barely an education. I think it was barely elementary, middle school education. And he essentially created the Ford Motor Company. And early on in the 20th century, when cars really started getting mass produced and more cars showed up in people's driveways, um, Henry Ford was questioned for his education and his experience. And I believe he was called either in court or in front of a group, and they questioned his education. And he's like, "Why do I need to be educated?" And I'm paraphrasing, but why do I need to be educated on everything in the automotive industry when I can just surround myself with people that know what I need to know, and I can push a button or call them, and they'll give me the information I need versus me going out and having to educate myself on every aspect of business or the automotive industry. That's pretty powerful. He surrounded himself by with people that knew everything that the business needed to grow and succeed. A mastermind group is a group of individuals who come together, share ideas, give feedback, support one another to achieve their goals. And I think that's the one of the biggest part is that support and accountability towards achieving goals. These groups can be incredibly powerful because they provide a sounding board for new ideas and a source of that accountability to take action, that push, that shove to keep going, even though you know within an industry or a business you could try and fail, but if you're surrounded by a great group of people that all want to succeed, they're going to keep pushing you to keep trying until you succeed. You should always have a group that promotes failing forward and learning and keep going. And that really provides a sense of community and belonging, which can be extremely helpful when you're working on something new or maybe something challenging. It's like this podcast. I am, and that's another question I usually get is, why did you do a podcast? I really enjoy doing the podcast. I like having conversations. I like meeting new people and hearing their experiences, creating that sense of community. And that's why we always ask everyone to, like and share and comment on the podcast because it helps us build that community, get people involved. And essentially it creates that networking, that mastermind group. To build a strong network, it can be very important to be intentional about the connections that you make. You don't want to make the wrong connections. You don't have to make every connection. If you haven't seen me, I'm very active on social media, and a lot of times on like LinkedIn, I'll get a lot of connection requests, but it's people trying to promote their own business. So they may be a marketer, a digital creator, a website maker. So you get a lot of those. So you have to kind of weed those out. I mean, would bringing in somebody like that benefit your project or your business? Yeah, then sure you should pay attention to it. But you kind of got to weed out the most important connections versus just the casual ones. So you should always be seeking out new opportunities to meet new people and build relationships with those that you meet. Don't shy away from accepting a phone call or accepting a meeting because you don't know the person and you're not really sure what they're up to, but it could end up being one of the more pivotal conversations that you have in your career or your life. It's also important to be consistent with your efforts, meaning you should actively maintain those connections over time, especially if you're working in business and you're connecting with different clients or customers. That follow up is so important, and those connections are so important. And I even identified at the end of last year that I was failing at connecting with past clients. That over the last 6 years of working in real estate, I wasn't actively connecting with my past clients as much as I should be, because out of everything of being a past client and creating or completing a transaction, there's still people, and a lot of them I still call my friends. Some of them I call my family, and it's very important to stay in touch because it should be much more than that transaction or that sale or whatever it might be. and they just kind of float off. And humans want to deal with humans, and that's just it. And real deals with real. It should never just be about production numbers and production goals and money goals. It should be really about establishing relationships, and that's what I work on in my industry each and every day. And attending those networking events, joining professional associations, clubs, using social media as a tool to connect with others in your industry is very, very important to building that strong network. But you have to build it using and connecting with the right people. Starting a mastermind can be daunting for folks. And if you really haven't educated yourself on masterminds and what the meaning is behind them, it can be kind of overwhelming to try to accomplish. And instead of starting a mastermind group, you could seek out mastermind groups that you would want to join and learn from and how they organize it and prepare the group. So, starting a mastermind group can be a great way to continue to build that community of support for your business and your own goals. To get started, you're going to need to find a group of like-minded individuals who are committed to achieving their goals. Then you're going to need to establish some ground rules for the group that you're starting, such as when and where and how often you'll meet, what types of information will be shared and provided. And lastly, you need to set goals for the group and hold each other accountable for achieving them. We were talking last night at my networking group meet and greet of future meet and greets and future networking events and how we can structure them and where are we going to have them, and really kind of playing off each other on different ideas of how to make them valuable. It's one thing to have a mastermind group or a networking group and you all show up and you just stand around chit chat. That's not necessarily valuable for everybody. So if the members of the group don't find it valuable, then they're not going to come back. And you want them to participate in the events, month after month or quarter after quarter. And we were actually I was talking to members of our group last night, and there was a not-for-profit representation there. And this group works with not only less fortunate, but active duty and former active duty military members that are struggling. And I found that their cause that they were trying to promote was super thoughtful, and it was very insightful. And I love learning more about it. So we had talked about the next networking event that we would allow this group to make a presentation about their efforts and maybe do a little fundraising within that networking event. And you know what? Those types of conversations may or may not have occurred. Easy for me to say, if we didn't put this networking event together last night. So there's a lot of power in that information sharing, and remember, a lot of people will say knowledge is power, but knowledge is not power unless you put action behind it. Once you put action behind that, knowledge becomes very powerful. But if you have knowledge and education just for knowledge and education's sake, it's good, but it's not powerful. Networking and mastermind groups are powerful tools. They can help you achieve your goals, grow your business, advance a project. By building those strong network of connections and participating in a mastermind group, you'll have access to those new ideas, a ton of new resources, opportunities that can help take your business or your project or your organization to the next level. Don't be afraid to reach out and make those connections. Consider starting your own mastermind or networking group. It was interesting. Another conversation. I've had some great conversations this week. It's funny. It's feast or famine because a lot of times, I've gone weeks or months without any kind of strong conversation or interaction. And for me, in the last week, because of a concept that I've been working on with a colleague of mine, I've had 2 or 3 just great conversations this week. And one of them being with a very educated man that's PhD in genetics, ER doc. And we were bouncing some ideas off of him, and super insightful, way more educated than me. But when you bring these people within your room, you're really raising the temperature of the room, and you're raising your own internal vibrations as far as knowledge and seeking knowledge and that thirst for knowledge. So we should never shy away from those conversations, because you could feel overwhelmed, or you can feel very small when you're around people that have so much more education and experience. But if you come in with the right mindset is big with these groups, is that if you come in with the right mindset, you'll be able to absorb that information and turn it into your own. Um, so that's been one of my causes and pieces of momentum for this year was not to shy away from taking that call or taking that meeting. Setting up a Zoom call with somebody you really don't know. I had a conversation with a real estate investor that's down in the Mid Atlantic the other day, um, just because of some properties he's searching out. And he wasn't necessarily looking for properties in Syracuse or Central New York. He was open up to ideas that or opportunities that may be here in New York, but really he's concentrating on his efforts down in the Mid Atlantic states. But my point of that conversation was, he was telling me about, lenders and financing that are out there that are available to other investors. And it may be more accessible than people might think. So that was very, very insightful. And, if it wasn't for putting my real estate business out there and trying to connect with new people within the commercial real estate and business sales space, I may never have had that conversation with him. So, in closing, again, this was just kind of a spur of the moment topic that I wanted to put together and record, just in case it brought value to somebody else. And if you're out there and if you've been thinking about joining some type of group, a social club, a networking group, if you have any questions about starting your own, feel free to drop a comment on this video, or DM me directly. I'd be very happy to help you out in any way. It's this podcast was started, and I talked about it, I think the end of at some point last week, early this week, was, this podcast was started, again, on a whim during a pandemic when I had more time, and sat down and started the podcast and called it At the Coffee Table, because I spent a lot of years in a firehouse, as you've heard me say before, and we would sit around and we drink coffee or have a soda, and we talk about everything in the news and solve all the world's problems. We accomplish more in an hour or two than the politicians accomplished in a year or two. And there's just something about great conversation and being able to share ideas and be respectful of each other. You may never agree with everyone all of the time. You may agree with some of the people some of the time, but it's being respectful and walking away on a common ground without holding grudges, or without holding somebody accountable to their own morals and beliefs when they contradict what your morals or beliefs might be. But have those conversations, sit down, discuss. If you lead a team or an organization, sit down often with your team or organization and have a beverage and listen to people. Always keep seek to understand before being understood. Listen to people, listen to what they're saying, and take away some of the important parts. You may have to read between the lines, but seek out those important things, those important pieces of information that your team or organization may be sharing with you, that you may or may not have heard, or may or may not have been shared with you if you didn't take the time, to sit down with a beverage and have a conversation. So as always, please like, comment, share. Love to connect with people. Feel free to connect with Bob and I on Instagram or any of the social media outlets. Let me know what you think of this networking and mastermind group podcast. Let me know. I'd love to hear your experiences, positive or negative. And please just connect with us. And we appreciate you. I'm very appreciative of everybody that partakes and listens and watches our small little podcast here that we're trying to grow into a bigger community. With that, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Have a great day.